As I sit here reflecting on my journey, I realize that some stories are worth telling, especially the tales that make you feel like justice has been served. My name is Jamie. I am 28 years old, and I have always been the kind of person who believes in fairness. Yet, life has a funny way of teaching lessons. Let me take you through a memory that has lingered in my mind for years, a memory that evolved from frustration to satisfaction. This story begins in the heart of my professional life. I had just landed my first real job in the tech industry. I was bright-eyed, ambitious, and ready to make my mark. I had worked hard to prove myself, putting in long hours and pushing through challenges. I was part of a small team, and at that time I felt truly valued as an employee. But then, everything changed in one fateful meeting. The week began like any other, filled with meetings, code reviews, and team lunches. But on one gloomy Monday, the news hit me like a ton of bricks. Our company was undergoing a reorganization, and a new manager was taking over my department. I remember sitting at my desk when the announcement flashed across my computer screen, stirring a cocktail of emotions. I had shared a sense of camaraderie with my then peers, and suddenly, my role within that dynamic felt uncertain. I learned that my new manager was someone I had previously worked alongside, someone I felt overshadowed my potential back then. I can still recall the tightness in my chest as I realized I would have to report to someone I had always considered a peer, a colleague. But I did not understand yet that the stakes were even higher than I thought. I had been sick the previous week, dealing with a nasty flu, which kept me out of the office for barely a day. However, that single absence was about to turn my world upside down. With optimism, I approached my original manager, a man whom I had come to see as a mentor. Let's just call him Dick because he deserved nothing less. I went into his office, eager to discuss my future and express my disappointment. "Why wasn't I considered for the promotion?" I asked, my voice steady but my heart racing. Dick's response hit me hard. He glanced at me with that all too familiar smirk and said, "Jamie, you were out sick, and we had to make a decision." My heart sank, and I felt a surge of disbelief. Was it really that easy to be overlooked for a position I had worked so hard to earn? I knew that the tides had turned against me, and the job I once cherished suddenly felt like a trap. For weeks, I walked around in a haze, contemplating my options, grappling with the bitterness of this betrayal. I started to realize that if a mere absence could result in losing a chance at advancement, this was not a place where I could thrive. I could feel my self-worth eroding. I longed for a workplace that valued commitment and passion over temporary setbacks. It took all my strength, but I eventually made the decision to leave that position, and I landed somewhere new shortly after. Fast forward a few years. I was now climbing the career ladder and had reached a senior management position. My determination had proven fruitful as I found myself surrounded by talented individuals who appreciated my contributions. My team was rock solid, and my leadership style emphasized teamwork and collaboration. But then, like a ghost from the past, Dick resurfaced in my life. While our paths had diverged, fate decided to intertwine them once again when our company was seeking a new vice president of engineering. The chief financial officer approached me one afternoon and said, "Didn't you work at Company X? We found a great candidate for the VP position. Do you know him?" When I learned that the candidate was, in fact, Dick, I felt a rush of emotions: surprise, anger, and an overwhelming sense of destiny. I was finally in a position to make a difference, to have a say, to take control of an opportunity I had once been denied. The memories of the past came flooding back. Each moment spent under Dick's leadership infuriated me. This was the moment I thought about constantly. I looked the CFO in the eye and said, "Yes, I know him, and I believe he would be a poor fit for our organization." His eyebrows raised in surprise, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. I knew the impression I had built up over the years would hold weight. Thankfully, the CFO respected my opinion and did not move forward with Dick. The words left my lips before I could even rethink my decision, and as I walked away from that conversation, I felt a rush of empowerment. I had finally turned the tables on a man who had once belittled my career aspirations. But this was not the end of my journey. In the coming weeks, I discovered that Dick, despite being rejected, was contacting other executives in our industry, a tactic used to gather support, talent, and perhaps even leverage against me. I could sense that Dick might try to sabotage my work, just as he had once done for so many others. As the tension built, I found myself constantly on edge, worrying about how far he would go this time. My professional world felt threatened, and I feared that it could spiral out of control. After intense weeks of strategizing and pulling my team together, I rolled up my sleeves to confront the situation head-on. I was determined to protect my position and my team from any potential fallout from Dick. I dived into my work and improved my team's performance. We developed current projects that dazzled and impressed upper management, showcasing our capability and commitment to success. I learned the importance of vigilance and adaptability during these trying times, reinforcing my conviction that I would not back down. However, just when I thought things were settling, I received a call from a colleague, which felt like a punch to the gut. Apparently, Dick had filled the air with rumors claiming that I was unfit for my management role and that my decisions were leading to failure within our department. The betrayal struck harder than the previous experience. My mind raced back to my early days of disappointment and insecurity. I could feel the old feelings creeping back. In that moment, I chose to push through. I decided that I needed to act, and this time my actions would be deliberate. I asked my team for an all-hands meeting. In that meeting, I laid out my plans for the future and asked each team member to take ownership of their projects. I encouraged open discussion on any challenges they might be facing. I felt the bond with my team solidifying as we faced the storm together. They were my strength, and I would not let Dick's shadows ruin the progress we had made. Still, shadows lingered. I felt the repercussions even after my team gained confidence. Plans were unfolding around me that I could not control, forming a noose of tension that tightened with every passing day. On top of everything, Dick had started to influence other departments, leveraging his connections in an effort to influence management against me. It was disheartening to see how easily he could sway opinions. I could feel myself breaking under the pressure, aware of how precariously my situation stood. It all came to a head one evening during a massive company meeting. Tensions were high, and all the directors were there, including Dick. He stood up, a smug grin on his face as he began weaving tales of fabricated failures linked to my department. I could feel the blood rushing to my head, anger boiling just beneath the surface. But even as my heart raced and my mind swirled, I kept my composure in the face of the storm. I listened to every word he spoke, waiting for the moment where I could salvage my worth. Finally, I rose to my feet, and as I did, I could see my colleagues exchanging glances, a cocktail of expectation and anxiety lining their faces. I stepped forward and spoke, my voice steady and determined. "Ladies and gentlemen, I respect the need to discuss any concerns about our teamwork and productivity. However, I must remind you that these claims are based on distorted perceptions, failing to recognize our team's significant accomplishments. I invite you to engage in an open discussion and evaluate our work on its merits." Dick's expression shifted as the truth hit the air. I had taken a stand and refused to let his lies define me. I could see others nodding in agreement as I spoke, feeling my confidence swell. My words hung in the air for what felt like an eternity. Then I sat back down, heart pounding, but knowing I had taken a risk that was worth it. By the time that evening ended, I felt different. I had chosen to confront adversity rather than falling into obscurity. Though the swim against the current was still daunting, the tide appeared to have changed. As weeks passed, the majority of my colleagues began to see Dick for what he truly was, and support for my team solidified swiftly. After several follow-up discussions, my superiors initiated a performance review of Dick's past performance. Eventually, the repercussions began to crumble around him as well. I was later contacted by the chief executive officer who mentioned that, after careful assessment, Dick had become a liability, which led to him being released from his position. The enchantment of justice was a sweet elixir, filling me with satisfaction. The whispers that had once been spread about my competence now melted away as new dialogues of leadership filled my workplace. With time, I continued to thrive in my role, and I endeavored to create an environment conducive to open collaboration and respect. It was not merely about revenge, but ensuring a culture that fostered merit, dedication, and transparent communication. I had harnessed my anger and converted it into a beacon for what should never be repeated. I had turned my hurt into hope, crafting that pain into purpose. And at the end of it all, I came to understand that while I never could have imagined how the threads of my life would intertwine again with Dick, The scenarios played out to reflect the lessons I had learned about resilience. In that moment of triumph, my heart burst with gratitude. This was about more than just revenge. It was about realizing my potential and embracing the power I had to shape my world. Joining forces with my team, we flourished. It felt like a rebirth of sorts, a new beginning filled with passion and purpose. I feel proud of what we accomplished together. It serves as a reminder that sometimes the voices of doubt can spiral into applause, and from pain can emerge victorious paths. So the next time you feel powerless against the face of unfairness, remember that everything is an opportunity. Anyone can tilt the scales of their story. What I took from my experience was that dignity and courage may be hard to find, but they can forge powerful paths in the end. Would you like to hear more stories like mine? Let us ignite your curiosity, and do not forget to subscribe and become a part of this narrative journey.